Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to be reviewing Kid Ball Adventure on the Nintendo Switch. Now this game is a 2D precision platformer that just released on August 24th of 2022 and currently sells for $4.99 on the Nintendo Switch eSHOP. The game is published by eSHOP and it has a download size of 79 megabytes. Now with all the precision platformers on the Nintendo Switch, does this one do enough to separate itself from the crowd? Well, that's what we'll figure out in today's review. Now just remember, if you are liking the content, one of the best ways to help support the channel is just hit that like button. Now storyline-wise, they are somewhat copying the premise of the original Super Meat Boy. You as Kid Ball see the love of your life being taken away and captured by a knight riding a dragon. You therefore set out to save her and have to make your way through the various levels in hopes of retrieving her. Now, although they copied the premise, what's missing here is that you don't get the awesome comical cutscenes like you did in Super Meat Boy. You rather get some pretty bland loading screens that really don't deliver the same level of motivation to keep going to find out what's happening. So storyline-wise, the game here is pretty bleak, but you know what? Precision platformers are way more about the gameplay, so let's jump into that. Now gameplay-wise, the whole game is separated into 100 different levels, and every 5 levels you get to what's called a checkpoint level, meaning that if you unfortunately lose all of your lives, that is the level you will restart if you decide to continue your adventure. Now the somewhat original mechanic here for this game is that since you're playing as a ball, you will continuously be bouncing. Now what this means is that there's actually no action buttons needed. All you have to do is control your bounce in a variety of ways to make your way to the end of the level. Now the levels themselves feature only 2 types of collectibles: gems that once you collect 10 will give you an extra life, and a key that will basically open the exit to the level. Now the collecting of the gems theoretically is optional, however the key is a must. Without it you will not be able to progress. So the basic objective of each level is make your way to the key, then make your way to the exit. Now all the other mechanics or obstacles that you face are not provided by your character, but rather by the environment. Now, as is tradition for these type of games, as you make your way through the levels, the complexity and difficulty of them will keep increasing. You eventually will see the addition of enemies that you'll have to make your way around, new kinds of traps, moving platforms, and even eventually projectiles. Now for veterans of this genre, I would definitely place the regular mode of this game on the easier end of the precision platformer spectrum. And maybe with the exception of 1 or 2 levels, I was only really challenged by this game in the final 20 levels or so. However, for newcomers to the genre, I would say that there is a pretty decent progression here without the game ever feeling like it's becoming unmanageable. Now, as for the overall level design and obstacles that you face, the downside here is that I found them pretty generic. I just never reached a point in this game where I felt like I hadn't seen this before. And even when I reached halfway through the game and you do get a character swap at that point, I was hoping that there would be new mechanics or at least a new feeling to that other character injected. However, unfortunately, it was only a cosmetic change to the character. All the mechanics remained exactly the same. On the upside, however, I do have to say that everything here works just fine. The hitboxes are fair, and the level designs are fairly varied. It's just, as I said earlier, it's nothing you haven't seen before. Now if we move on to the controls. And as I mentioned earlier, there are no action buttons here, so this will be a fairly short section. Movement in the game can be either controlled with the left joystick or using a D-pad. Once again, a very nice consideration because the D-pad control, in my opinion, was superior for this game. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the bouncing of your character happens automatically, so really all you need to do is control his movement and make your way around the obstacles. The good news here is that the controls are fairly responsive and they're just what you need for making your way around the game. Now if we move on to the graphics and sound. Now graphically, this game looks good. It looks colorful, it looks fun. The only problem once again is the designs are pretty bland. And all the assets used here don't really look like custom assets, they rather look like assets that came from a package. So does this game look good and colorful? Yes it does, but I really can't congratulate them on an artistic design because I feel like I've seen all these assets before. Sound design, it's a little bit more of the same story. It feels very generic. Does it work? Does it add to the gameplay? Yes, it does. However, it doesn't feel like a custom soundtrack that will blow your socks off. However, at the same time, don't forget that we're talking about a pretty budget release here, so I don't want to be too hard on them for these aspects. Now it's time for the verdict. And if this is one of the first reviews of mine you're watching, my full review scale is available down below in the description of the video. And in the case of Kid Ball Adventure on the Nintendo Switch, I'm going to be giving this game a 6, putting it at the low end of a decent game. Now, as a fairly experienced precision platformer player, I managed to blast through this game in about 2 hours. Now, to be fair, there is a fair level of replayability here with more difficult modes. However, due to the blandness of the overall game, I'm really not motivated for a second playthrough. At the same time, given its budget price, I did have a decent amount of fun for the time I did spend within the game. And as I mentioned earlier, for someone who might be new to the precision platformer genre and wants a pretty easy starting point, I would say Kid Ball Adventure could be a good pickup. Overall, however, it is important to mention that there is a decent number of better precision platformers out there, and especially if you wait for sales, you can pick them up at an equivalent or even lower price. So now I want to hear what you think. Are you going to be picking up this game? And if you did, what do you think about my review? And on the way out, don't forget that if you did like the content, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and click on the notification bell so you know when all my future content comes out. And as usual, I hope I'll see you in my next video.